Crying out loud. Mr. Gardner-Wood, can you still see and hear me?
Yes, I can, Judge.
Okay. All right, folks, thanks for your patience. I know it's been a little bit of a challenge with the technology and the timing. So before we formally get started, let me ask Team Fozzie to take a look at the people in the virtual courtroom and make sure that all of your lawyers and all of your witnesses and your timer are in the virtual courtroom. Can you do that for me, Team Fozzie? Mr. Weisner, maybe you can confirm that for me.
They're all here, Your Honor.
Okay. And the same thing for Team Pepe. Can you take a look at all of the people that are in the virtual courtroom, make sure that all of your lawyers and all of your witnesses and your timer are in the virtual courtroom?
Your Honor, everyone is here from Team Pepe.
Okay. And for both teams, when I look at the people that are in the virtual courtroom right now, everybody who's supposed to be here is here, you're telling me, and there is no one in the virtual courtroom who's not supposed to be here. Do you agree with that, Team Fozzie?
Yeah.
And do you agree with that, Team Pepe?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Is the prosecution ready for trial?
Yes.
Is the defense ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. The judges and the scoring panels have already gotten copies of the trial roster with the team's code. I need to confirm that if any video recorders are present, or if anybody's trying to record this round, that they have the permission from both teams. I need to inform the teams and the gallery members that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs or screenshots of the competition during the round, and that team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission and use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. I need to remind the teams that no recesses will be allowed, with the exception of those that are necessary for a health emergency. And particularly, folks, I cannot give you a recess between the end of witness examinations and the beginning of closing arguments. I do have the discretion to stop time for technical difficulties in the virtual competition. If you're seeing technical difficulties with your team, if I haven't seen it, let me know. We can pause time so that we get the technical difficulty corrected. I'm going to ask all of the participants to please turn on their cameras so that the scoring judges can see each of you. I've got Erica Marquez, who I still don't have a video for, but I think she's a timer. So,
Your Honor, she's their timekeeper.
Xavier, can you turn your camera back on? Okay. Okay. Let me ask the three scoring judges if they have any reason to be biased in judging either team. You recognize any of the participants, any conflicts? Mr. Gardner-Wood?
No conflict, Your Honor.
Ms. Canelio?
No conflict, Your Honor.
Ms. Doyle?
No conflict, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. I need to remind the teams that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I need to remind the teams that your compliance with the time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. At this time, I'm going to ask each team to introduce themselves. Let's start with Team Fozzie. Would the attorneys please introduce themselves?
I am Dustin Weisner. I am doing the prosecution opening, directing Kyle Kuzak, and crossing our star, Avery Becker.
All right.
I'm Kenzie Stowe, and
And
I'll
would
be
the-
directing.
Oh, hold on.
Fuentes.
Hold on, Kenzie. Let me have the witnesses for the prosecution please introduce themselves.
I'm Christina. I'll be doing Alex Fuentes.
My name is Casper Fein, and I'll be Jordan Markowitz.
So Detective Markowitz, I saw you moving your lips, but you were muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, great, Your Honor. My name is Casper, and I'm Jordan Markowitz in this case.
Okay, but you're with Team Pepe, right?
Are we? Team what are
No, he's with us on Fozzie Bear.
we? No, sir.
Okay. All right, and is there a third witness for Team Fozzie?
I'm sorry, that's me. I'm Xavier Rogo, and I'm going to be
Okay, and Xavier, I couldn't hear you. There was a buzz or some static.
sorry. I'm Xavier Rogo, and I'm going to be Kyle Kuzak in this case.
Okay, I'm still having some difficulty with your audio. And then the timer is Erica Marquez. Okay, and for Team
Correct.
Pepe, can I have the three attorneys introduce themselves for Team Pepe? The defense.
I'm Dustin Weisner. I do the prosecution opening. I direct Kyle Kuzak, and I cross Avery Becker. You were calling Fozzie, right?
No. Dustin, you're on Fozzie, right?
Yes, I am on Fozzie, as long as, and Kenzie and Yasmin are too.
Okay. So let me have Dustin and Yasmin and Kenzie introduce yourselves again.
I'm Dustin. I'm a prosecution lawyer. I do the prosecution opening. I direct Kyle Kuzak, and I cross Avery Becker.
Okay.
See?
I'm Yasmin, and I cross-examine Perkins. I direct Porterfoot.
Okay. And Yasmin, I couldn't hear you. So either maybe get closer to your microphone or turn it up a little. You want to try that again?
Yasmin.
Sorry, it was, never mind. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, it's better.
Okay, I'm crossing Taylor Perkins and I'm directing Jordan Markowitz.
Okay. And then Kenzie?
I'm gonna direct Alex Fuentes and cross Blake Van Owen.
Okay. And can I have your three? I'm sorry?
Yeah, can I say something real quick, Your Honor?
Yes.
I forgot to say I'm also playing Taylor Perkins as well.
So
I'm
you're
Alex
doing
Taylor.
two
Yeah,
witnesses?
Yes.
Okay.
that's correct.
No,
All right.
wait, Christina, you're just doing Alex Fuentes for this one because you
Oh.
play Taylor on the other one.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. Just Alex Fuentes.
Okay, Christina is Alex Fuentes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Xavier, you're playing Kyle Cusack.
Yes.
And Casper, you're Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Sure.
Okay. And the timer is Erica Marquez.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any preliminary matters for the prosecution?
I would like a motion to sequester witnesses.
Well, in this format, I'm not going to allow that simply because I need them to be available as we proceed through the trial. Any other preliminary matters for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Any preliminary matters for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we ask that exhibits be shown by screen share as they are being authenticated by the witness and that they are constructively not shown to the jury.
I'll grant that request. And then once the exhibits have been admitted, you can assume that they will constructively be shown to the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the defense also asks that timekeepers are able to communicate with each other by using the Zoom chat feature in order to avoid any time discrepancies.
Yes, I'll allow that.
And Your Honor, the defense also asks that the stipulated facts are constructively read into the record.
Any objection?
I believe so.
Okay, I'll allow that. You can assume that the stipulated facts have been constructively read to the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right, then we'll proceed to opening statements. On behalf of the prosecution,
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor.
yes, ma'am.
May myself and the rest of the defense please introduce themselves to the jury.
Yes, please. I thought we had done that already, but apparently not. So, yeah, would the defense, Team Pepe, please introduce the three attorneys?
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Haley Karras, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, as well as the cross-examination of Kyle Cusack.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Lily Mastrangelo, and I will be delivering the opening statement, conducting the direct examination of Professor Blake Van Owen, and conducting the cross-examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz. Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Caroline Tusek. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Avery Becker, the cross-examination of Alex Fuentes, as well as giving the closing argument.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Chloe Ells and I am Avery Becker.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Donna Shaw and I am Taylor Perkins.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Connor Grant and I am Professor Blake Van Owen.
All right, thank you. And your timer is Emma Gamble, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And now let's move to opening statements. On behalf of the prosecution,
Yes, Your Honor. I'm ready.
go ahead.
Rage, rivalry, and revenge. Rage, rivalry, and revenge. Rage, rivalry, and revenge led to the second-degree burglary and the first-degree murder. Ladies and gentlemen, today we talk about the case of a young man boiling the brim with rage. Avery Becker was a selfish, self-absorbed, and determined to get in his own way. Avery Becker had an irrational jealousy that led to the murder of Professor Mackenzie Brackman. To better understand how this all led to burglary and murder, let me give you some background. Avery Becker competed on his high school mock trial team. By all accounts, Avery really was a gifted and talented mock trial lawyer. However, his ego got the best of him. He believed that he was better than his real-life coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Avery believed that he didn't have to work at his craft because of his natural gifts. He didn't have to practice his assignments. Avery's arrogance peaked the most it could when he won the Best Attorney Awards at regionals. He became even more complacent and wouldn't put in the practice the other students were doing. When Coach Brackman confronted him and challenged him to work harder, do you know what he did? He just got angry and he quit. Even Avery will tell you that he was so absolutely rageful that he went and vandalized his coach's car, a white Porsche with a black Sharpie. He texted his best friend, Alex Fuentes. He was going to go to Brackman's house and vandalize it. If Brackman thinks he's upset about what happened to his car, just wait until you see what I do to his house. Those words clearly show motive, intent, and foresight to commit burglary and subsequent actions once inside the house to commit one first-degree murder. And ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what this kid did. On March 6, 2020, he broke into the house with a plan to vandalize it. Mr. Brackman was still at home. When he confronted him, a fight began. The evidence will show that the two of them struggled and that Avery stabbed him brutally with a butcher knife, leaving a pool of blood on the floor. Now, you will hear in this testimony from several experts. Like in all cases, experts can differ on almost anything. But what we believe to be true, clear evidence that we had motive and opportunity with cell phone data confirming he was in the area, with motive from the text that Avery's cell phone data really did show he was in the area. That Avery fit the description of the attacker, the height, the weight, and the posture of the attacker, just as Avery would. The defense will try as hard as they can to picture that Avery's motive was weak compared to the others. The key is that they won't show that there is no motive. They will try to dispute the cell tower data. They can produce no phone to do it, though. They will try to say the fight and murder just didn't happen the way the police said it did. But they cannot provide you with anything to back this up except for vile speculation. This case is straightforward. Rage, resentment, and rivalry led to the first-degree murder and the second-degree burglary. You must find Avery Becker.
Opening statement for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Lily Mastrangelo, and along with my co-counsel, Haley Karras and Caroline Tusak, we represent the defendant, Miss Avery Becker. This is a case about carelessness and convenience that led to an erroneous conclusion. Now, the prosecution has made a dangerous conclusion as to who caused Mackenzie Brackman's death. Throughout this trial, you'll learn how the prosecution failed to follow a clear lead and failed to confirm Miss Becker's solid alibi. The prosecution willingly overlooked evidence and alternate suspects for the sake of convenience. The prosecution only gathered enough evidence to come to a quick and easy conclusion, but that conclusion doesn't make sense. The tunnel vision of the prosecution led them to a convenient conclusion rather than a correct one. What the evidence in this case will make abundantly clear is that Miss Becker couldn't have possibly committed the alleged crimes. And what the lack of evidence in this case will show is that careless investigations lead to incorrect conclusions. Members of the jury, that is why the wrong person is sitting here on trial today and why the prosecution won't prove their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. First, you'll hear from Ms. Taylor Perkins, who is Ms. Becker's best friend. Ms. Perkins will tell you about her experience with the mock trial team and the relationship she observed between Mr. Brackman and Ms. Becker. Ms. Perkins will tell you how fractures in this relationship ultimately led to Ms. Becker getting kicked off the mock trial team. Ms. Perkins will then tell you about March 5th, in which she and Ms. Becker went to the Fry Shack and then to the mall. And on the morning of March 6th, Ms. Becker realized she had lost her phone, and she and Ms. Perkins decided to spend the rest of the day looking for that lost phone. But that phone was never found. Thus, Ms. Becker couldn't have possibly committed the alleged crimes, as she was on the other side of town with Ms. Perkins the entire day. Next, Professor Blake Van Owen will testify, an expert witness and private investigator. Professor Van Owen will take you through his evaluation of the investigation conducted by the prosecution. Professor Van Owen will tell you how Detective Markowitz's investigation of the crime scene was rushed, sloppy, and was blinded by tunnel vision. Professor Van Owen will tell you about the three main issues he found in the prosecution's investigation. In his expert opinion, those three main issues are: 1, the uncertainty of the prosecution's proclaimed stabbing method, the inaccuracy of the prosecution's cell tower diagrams, and 3, that overall the prosecution's investigation was methodologically unsound. Professor Van Owen will tell you how the carelessness of the prosecution led them to a convenient conclusion rather than an accurate one. And finally, the defendant, Ms. Avery Becker, will testify, who will tell you that she shouldn't even be here. Ms. Becker will tell you about her experience with the mock trial team and her relationship with Mr. Brackman. Ms. Becker will tell you that this relationship had its difficulties. Ms. Becker will tell you about a prior incident with Mr. Brackman's car, and then she'll tell you about her regret and the lengths she went to make amends with Mr. Brackman. Ms. Becker will then tell you about March 5th, in which she went to the Fry Shack in the mall with Ms. Perkins, and how she lost her phone that day and didn't even realize it until the next. And on March 6th, she and Ms. Perkins spent the entire day retracing their steps to find that lost phone. Finally, Ms. Becker will tell you that she could never and she would never harm Mr. Brackman. At the end of this trial, it'll be evident that the prosecution did not meet their burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution's investigation was sloppy, careless, and led to an erroneous conclusion. Members of the jury, don't let the prosecution's desire for convenience and their utter disregard for accuracy put an innocent young woman in jail. At the end of this trial, when the prosecution fails to prove both of their claims, the defense will ask that you find Miss Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pastoranta. Would the prosecution please call the first witness?
Your Honor, I would like to call Alex Fuentes to the stand.
All right. Alex Fuentes has already been.
All right, Miss Fuentes, will you please state your name for the record?
Alex Fuentes.
Are you a student at CHS?
Yes, I'm a senior at CHS.
Do you know Avery Becker?
Yes, I know Avery Becker. Me and her are were friends.
How long have you guys been friends for?
So me and Avery started being friends since freshman year of high school. So we just stayed as friends for the rest of the years.
Were you on the mock trial team together?
Yes, we were.
Did Avery ever have problems with you or the moot court team?
With me, not so much, but with the whole court, yes. Like
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Hold on a second. How is it speculation?
Pardon?
How is the what's speculation about it?
Speculation means that the witness doesn't have any rational basis to give the statement of fact. It means that they're guessing or projecting.
Alex Fuentes knew Avery Becker, so it's not speculation.
Okay, do you want to reply?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Why don't you rephrase the question, Ms. Sally? Also stand the objection.
Which question were we on, Ms. Fuentes? Sorry. Okay.
If me and Avery were on the mock trial.
So
yeah, I think you said were you and Avery on the mock trial?
were you and Avery on the mock trial team together?
Yes, we were. Me and Avery were on the mock trial team together.
Did Avery ever have problems with you or the moot court team?
With me, not so much, but with the whole team, yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
You need to have the witness demonstrate how they know what they're talking about. So I'll sustain the objection.
Oh my. Okay, so should I move on? Yes. Okay, how did Avery have problems with Mr. Brackman?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
So Ms. Lee, you have to ask the witness if she knows something, how she knows it. Did she see it? Did she hear it? Did she otherwise observe it firsthand?
Okay. Did Avery ever have problems with you or the moot court team?
With me, she did not have any problems at all, but with the whole team, she did. She would always give attitude for no reason.
How so?
Well, she just gets mad out of nowhere. Like you do the littlest things, she just gets mad. So that's why the whole team got tired of her, and including Mr. Brackman.
So, in your can I have a second to
Sure.
just like gather? Okay. Did you ever see Avery have problems with Mr. Brackman?
Well, I only seen one, but the rest, Taylor's the one who told me one time that.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
The objection was hearsay.
Yes,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Lee, what's your response?
What was the objection for?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What's the objection for?
Hearsay?
But like for what? What did Ms. Fuentes say?
So the witness was about to state something that someone else had said out of court.
No, Miss Caroline Toosk, what was your objection for?
It was for hearsay.
What did she say the hearsay was for?
The witness
It's
was
not-
about to say something someone else said outside of court.
Did you ever see Avery have problems with the coach?
Yes, I did actually.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer.
Okay. Yes, I did actually. I did see Avery get into a feud with Mr. Brackman.
What did the coach do?
After they got into an argument, coach decided to talk to Avery about being more respectful to the team.
Objection, Your Honor.
But-
Hearsay.
Overruled. You can continue
But-
your answer.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Oh, 1 second, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, are we on the next question?
No, we're still on the same question. Okay. So coach's reaction was he tried talking to Avery about being more respectful to the team, but Avery got mad, so she stormed out. So once Avery stormed out,
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative.
Overruled.
but she decided to go to his car, vandalize it, and write on his car Worst Attorney Award, thinking she wrote it in dry erase marker. Turned out
Objection,
it
Your
was-
Honor. Lack of foundation.
That I'll sustain. Why don't you ask another question, Miss Sally?
All right. So after Avery stormed out, where did he go?
So after Avery stormed out, being talked to Mr. Brackman, she went to the parking lot to go vandalize his car and write Worst Attorney Award, knowing
Objection,
that
Your Honor. Speculation.
What's your response, Miss Sally?
It's her opinion.
Okay, that wouldn't be admissible. She can talk about things that she saw.
Okay. So should I move on?
Or you can ask her another question about what she saw, and then she could explain that.
So did you see, go away. Did you see, the stuff written on Mr. Brackman's car?
I did, in fact. I was actually on my way out when that happened. I didn't see Avery though, but I did see what she wrote on the car though.
Okay. Did you ever hear or see or know of Mr. Brackman's response to the writing on his car from Avery Becker?
Yes, I did actually. I happened to walk by the classroom and he was talking with Avery about what he did to his car. Avery got mad and then Avery gave coach attitude, but way worse than before. So coach had enough and told him that you were out.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
It's not hearsay because it's not being offered or to the truth or of the matter. It's just being said.
Well, so if it's not being offered for the truth, then what is the purpose for offering the statement?
because it's in the case.
Well, why do you think that you need to have that in evidence? What does it show?
I'm not trying to enter it into evidence. I'm just trying to let the jury know.
Okay.
And it shows motive.
And what?
It shows motive.
Okay, but it doesn't object it doesn't address the hearsay objection, which I'll sustain. You can ask her another question.
Okay, so shortly after the murder, Ms. Fuentes, did you talk to Avery?
Yes, I
Objection,
did.
Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, I did talk to Avery on the day of the murder.
What did you and Avery talk about?
So the text messages between me and Avery, to be exact, was about to speak to coach about putting her back on the mock trial team.
Objection, Your Honor, facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
But when I told Avery that I already talked to coach, but he did not want to put her back on the team, she told me in a very suspicious way that she was going to go to his house, talk to him, quote unquote, and vandalize the house.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Why is it not hearsay, Ms. Sully?
Not hearsay because it's just a recipient of the statement. If it's hearsay, then it would be in a statement against interest admission by a party.
So the last part is correct. The objection is overruled. This is a statement by a party opponent, the defendant. So,
Okay. Oh, my bad. What were you going to say, Your Honor?
I'm sorry?
What were you going to say, Your Honor?
You're right. The objection is overruled. You can continue with your examination.
Okay, Ms. Fuentes, when did he say that he was going to do that?
He never said when he was going to do it.
Have you ever stolen Avery's phone?
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
Okay.
Okay. No, I did not steal Avery's phone. I left her phone back where it was. I did not steal it.
What happened to your phone?
Nothing really. I just upgraded it 3 months ago, so I haven't given out my new information to anyone.
And does Avery have a temper at times?
She has it all the time. Like.
Objection, Your Honor, improper character evidence.
It's just an opinion, Your Honor.
Objection will be sustained.
And did you know Blair Rollins?
I know him. We didn't talk that much, but I seen him around the hallways.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Ms. Tusick?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, Ms. Castaneda, I need you to still be visible. Thank you.
Sorry, Your Honor.
That's okay.
Good evening, Mr. Fuentes. I'm going to start talking a little bit about mock trial. The mock trial means a lot to you, correct?
It does. That was my favorite class.
You worked really hard in your assignments, didn't you?
I did. I study every day and night.
And you believed yourself to have a knack for it, is that right?
Well, I mean, an act, not so much, but it could be that too.
Isn't it true that it irked you the way Miss Becker participated in mock trial?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. My witness can't answer about another witness.
Mr. Weisner, this is Ms. Lee's witness. She needs to pose the objection. Re-ask your question, please, Ms. Tusick.
Yes, Your Honor. Isn't it true that it irked you the way Avery Becker participated in mock trial?
Not really, but.
Now you consider yourself to be pretty equally skilled with Miss Becker, is that right?
Yes.
But you believe that Miss Becker won her awards not because of talent, but because of good looks. Is that correct?
No, that's not true. I don't know how she won. She did not study at all. She never came prepared. So
Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. But you do believe that part of the reason Miss Becker won her awards was because of good looks. Is that correct?
no, like I said.
I'll move on. Now, you were envious when Miss Becker won awards at mock trial, correct?
I was a little mad, but no, I was not envious.
But you did see it as a slap in the face. Is that correct?
No.
Ms. Fuentes, is it your testimony today that you didn't see it as a slap in the face when Miss Becker won those awards?
No, I did not.
And you prepared a sworn statement before coming into this case, is that correct?
I did.
And you were under oath while you were making this statement, is that right?
You cut out, I'm sorry?
You were under oath when you were making the statement, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'd like to show, opposing counsel, page 28, line 41 on Ms. Cifuentes' expert testimony, testimony.
Sorry?
I'd like to direct opposing counsel's attention to Ms. Cifuentes' affidavit, specifically page 28, line 41.
Line 21?
Line 41.
Oh, 41.
Yes.
Let me get that real quick. Okay, I might have said that, but I might have said that, but to be honest, I just felt annoyed, not envious.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. Let's move on. Now let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Ms. Becker. Now you claim that you were basically best friends with Avery Becker. Is that correct?
Not best friends, but we were good friends.
But you think criminal charges should have been placed against your good friend after the car incident. Is that correct?
No. Yes, I'm sorry.
And you claim to have had a friendly competition with her. Is that right?
No.
But you did have competition with her as she was on your team, correct?
Yes, I did have competition with her, even though she was on my team.
And isn't it true that you were excited to have Avery off of the team because it meant that you would receive a larger role?
No, I was not excited. Never said that.
But having Miss Becker off of the team would mean that you would receive a larger role. Is that correct?
I can't answer that because I never said I would have been happy.
Now, isn't it true that you really didn't see Miss Becker that often outside of mock trial?
We saw each other at the Fry Shack as well, so it's not just...
But not very often, correct?
Somewhat.
Now let's move on and talk about March 5th. You were at the Fry Shack on March 5th, is that right?
Correct, that was with Avery.
Yes, you saw Miss Becker and Miss Perkins there, correct?
So me and Avery were already hanging out. So we decided to go to the Fry Shack. But I left because I had to go get something real quick. So they were there.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Now you played a game on Avery Becker's phone while you were at the Fry Shack, correct?
Correct.
So you had Avery Becker's phone in your possession the day she lost it. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's move on. Talk a little bit about the text messages. Now you got a call to go down to the police station for an interview, correct?
No.
You did get a call to go down to the police station from Detective Markowitz to go down for an interview after Coach Brackman's unfortunate murder. Thank you. And you were aware you were going down for a full interview, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that you needed to bring your phone to show the text you claimed to have received from Ms. Becker, correct?
No.
Objection. That's not in evidence.
Response?
The text messages aren't in evidence.
Yeah, no, I understand what your objection is, but I'm asking Ms. Tusick if she wants to respond to the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm not asking Ms. Fuentes as to the content in the text messages, but rather she needed to bring her phone to show the text messages in the interview.
I understand. The objection will be overruled.
You didn't bring your phone to this interview, correct?
I did because they asked for screenshots.
Is it your testimony today that you brought your phone to that interview?
It is.
Okay. Now you prepared a sworn statement before coming to today's trial, correct?
Correct.
And you were aware that you were under oath while making that statement, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now I'd like to direct your attention to page 30, line 87 of Ms. Fuentes' affidavit.
87?
Yes. Page 30, line 87. Mr. Fuentes, would you please read out line 87?
Sure thing. It was okay and asked me to send screenshots of the text messages instead. Exhibit 14 is a printout of the screenshots.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. And would you also please read out exhibit 86? Excuse me. Yes, line 86.
Okay. I completely forgot my phone was charging and left it at home. We offered to come back with the phone after the interview, but the detective told us that it was okay.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Now let's move on. So it's true then, since you didn't bring your phone to the interview, Detective Markowitz didn't see the screenshots or the text conversation directly off of your phone?
No, because I got asked to bring the screenshots, not the phone.
Yes, but that wasn't the question I asked. The question I asked is if Detective Markowitz saw the text messages directly off of your phone.
No, like I said, he asked for screenshots, so that's what I gave them.
Thank you. Now, coincidentally, you no longer have that phone, correct?
Correct. I don't have that phone because I left it where it was.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that when you received these text messages, the only person that you told was Detective Markowitz?
False.
Objection outside the scope of direct.
Overruled.
Mr. Fuentes, isn't it true that you didn't notify Mr. Brackman when you received these text messages?
I did not.
Isn't it true that you didn't notify the school either?
Mm-mm.
And isn't it true that you didn't call the police when you received these text messages?
I did not, because they weren't bad.
So right when you received these text messages clearly containing a threat against Mr. Brackman, you didn't tell anyone. Isn't that true?
Correct. I did not tell anyone.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect examination. Ms. Salih?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. The witness can step down. Would the prosecution please call their next witness?
I believe I want to go next with Kyle Kuzak.
All right. Kyle Cusack, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Mr. Wisner.
Mr. Kuzak, can you please state your name for the record? Xavier?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Kyle Kuzak.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a crime scene reconstructionist for the Denver Police Department.
And what's your prior training?
I have attended the police academy and several reconstruction trainings.
How long have you been a crime scene reconstruction expert?
A little bit over 19 years.
During that time, what types of crimes have you investigated and reconstructed?
Oh, thousands. I've investigated like home invasions, burglaries, murder, domestic violence, and so on and so forth.
Have you testified in court before?
Yes, hundreds of times.
Your Honor, I would like to have CSR Kuzak recognized as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Objection, voir dire.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to conduct a brief voir dire.
Go ahead. Ms. Karas?
Isn't it true that the main aspect of your job is the actual reconstruction of a crime scene?
That and the investigation.
And this means that analysis is only one part of your investigation, correct?
Yes, but it plays a major role in the investigation and reconstruction.
And isn't it true that crime scene reconstruction creates more investigative questions during the analysis?
Yes.
Your Honor, I do not object to Mr. Kuzak being tendered as an expert in the fields of crime scene reconstruction and organization, but I do object to the witness being tendered as an expert in the field of analysis, as he claims himself that the analysis creates more questions than answers.
Objection will be overruled. The witness is qualified by education and experience particularly experience to testify as an expert. He'll be allowed to do so. You may continue, Mr. Wisner.
Now, Mr. Kuzak, how did you become involved in this case?
I was assigned by the Denver Police Department.
When was that?
It was March 6th, 2020. I arrived at the scene as other members of my lab were processing the scene.
What did you do after you arrived?
I followed standard procedure for crime scene reconstruction.
And what were those procedures?
First of all, I was methodical in processing the scene. We bagged and tagged all of the evidence, and we also photographed the entire scene.
And then what did you do?
I followed Bevel's event analysis methodology to reconstruct the scene.
What is Bevel's event analysis methodology?
It's a 5-step methodology that most experts use to reconstruct what happened.
And what makes the system so optimal?
The process is thorough, and crime scene reconstructionist experts prepare an initial report that must go through a peer review and final reconstruction report.
What kind of result does this lead to?
We think it leads to an extensive review and an accurate reconstruction of the crime scene.
Did you review the autopsy in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what were those results?
The autopsy established that the victim was stabbed only one time, and this was the cause of death.
How was the victim stabbed?
The knife blade had been inserted facing partially forward and towards the victim's scapula.
Kyle, do you have what has been marked as Exhibit 19 in front of you?
I do.
And what is this?
1 second, let me grab it. It's an autopsy report.
Is this the same autopsy report that you reviewed as part of this case?
Yes.
Are these the same findings that you reviewed at the time?
Yes.
And what were that?
The findings were that the victim was killed by a stab wound upper left side of the victim's back.
Your Honor, I would like Exhibit 19 entered into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I object on the grounds of hearsay, as this is an out-of-court statement.
Your Honor, I believe that this is a police report and a routine business document, and it should be admitted under those grounds.
Well, the foundation hasn't been established for a routine business record, so the objection is sustained. 19 will not be admitted. You may continue.
In this case, what did your thorough investigation reveal?
It revealed that the murderer approached the front door and tried to get in. When the murderer couldn't get in, they went to the side gate and came into the backyard. The murderer then came into the back sliding door.
Then what happened?
Based on the evidence, a struggle between the defendant and the victim occurred. We know this because of the scuff marks and broken plate in the area.
What happened next?
We know that the victim had a knife and that during the struggle, the murderer took it away and stabbed the victim.
Your Honor, speculation.
This is a crime scene expert talking about the crime scene that he's reconstructing. I don't believe there's any speculation in the answer of a struggle between a defendant and the victim occurred.
Response, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The speculation is contained in the answer, assuming that the perpetrator had a knife, which hasn't been entered as foundation or in evidence yet.
Well, he can opine to his analysis and reconstruction of the crime scene. And so I'm going to interpret his statements about the interaction between the victim and the murderer to be part of that. So I'll overrule the objection. You can continue, Mr. Wisner.
Would you like me to restate the question? It is 11 because the question itself isn't very obvious.
Yes, please.
What happened next?
We know that the victim had a knife and that during the struggle, the murderer took it away and stabbed the victim in the scapula.
How do you know the victim had a knife?
Well, the kitchen knife drawer was open and the knife block also had a knife missing. This is what makes our analysis the most probable one.
Why is that?
Well, the murderer wouldn't know the house well enough to break in, locate a knife, and attack the victim.
Can you describe the manner and how the stabbing was done?
Yes, the evidence at the scene revealed that there was a struggle as the parties struggled back towards the kitchen table. The attacker took the knife and stabbed the victim in the back shoulder blade area.
Is there anything else that happened?
When the victim tried to escape out the front door, he pulled out the knife, which caused him to bleed out and die.
Does the defendant fit the description of the person in the video to your analysis?
Yes.
Did your analysis of the cell phone data also place the defendant in the area?
Yes.
So based on everything you reviewed, the crime scene, the videos, the autopsy report, and the cell phone data, what is your expert opinion conclusion?
That Avery Becker broke in and stabbed Mr. Brackman to death after a struggle with a knife.
Thank you. No further questions.
Examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mrs. Karras.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Mr. Kuzak. Isn't it true that you arrived at the crime scene after it had been processed?
Not entirely processed.
But you arrived after the crime scene was processed, correct?
Not entirely. It hadn't been completed.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Response, Your Honor. Pardon me, Your Honor, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, we didn't hear anything.
I apologize. The objection is sustained. That question's already been asked and answered.
And because of this, that meant that you had to rely on previously gathered evidence, such as police reports and photographs, correct?
Yes.
Now, please, do you draw your attention to exhibits 1, 2, and 4? Do you have these in front of you?
1 second. Let me grab them. All right. Yes, I have them in front of me.
And can you identify what is in exhibit 1?
Exhibit 1 is him laying face down with blood coming out of his left shoulder.
And can you identify exhibit 2?
He's once again face down with blood coming out of his shoulder, looking by what looks like a door frame.
And finally, can you please identify exhibit 4?
Exhibit 4 is the same as exhibit 2, pretty much, only a closer angle of it.
And would you say that these are fair and accurate representations of these exhibits?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, the witness has authenticated and identified exhibits 1, 2, and 4. I now move to enter exhibit 1 into evidence.
1. Just exhibit 1.
Your Honor, I'm going to go through a process one at a time unless you'd like me to do otherwise.
Any objection to the admission of exhibit 1?
Absolutely not. These are just pictures of the dead body.
1 is admitted.
Your Honor, I now move to enter exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
Nope. Once again, it is a picture of the dead body. Very important.
2 is admitted.
And finally, I ask that exhibit 4 be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
I don't believe so.
4 will be admitted.
Now, Mr. Kuzak, please draw your attention to Exhibit 1 and 4. The victim's right hand is not in the same position in Exhibits 1 and 4, is it?
No, it isn't.
And now please draw your attention to Exhibit 2. Isn't it true that the victim has what appears to be a wedding band on his left ring finger?
Yes.
Yet, these matters are not mentioned anywhere in your report, are they?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Bastrangelo. You can stop sharing the screen. Next, I'm going to ask you about your theories in regard to the knife. You determined based off of the autopsy report that the knife was lodged in the victim's scapula, correct?
Yes.
And this would have made it very difficult to pull out the knife, correct?
Yes.
And even considering this, isn't it true that you claimed that the already weak victim must have pulled out the blade himself?
Yes.
You also took photos of the knife, correct?
Yes, I did.
And would you recognize your photo if I showed it to you?
Yes.
Ms. Matrangelo, can you please put Exhibit 6 on the screen? Can you identify what is Exhibit 6?
It's the knife that was used.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of this knife?
I'd say.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, the witness has authenticated and identified Exhibit 6. I now move to enter Exhibit 6 into evidence.
I believe a picture of the murder weapon is pretty important to the case. I do not object.
Mr. Wisner, I don't need to get it realized. I just asked if you had an objection. 6 is admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, looking at the photo of the knife, you can see blood on the handle, correct?
Yes, you can.
Now I ask you again to draw your attention to Exhibits 1 and 4. Do you see any blood on the victim's hands?
No, I do not. Then again, we can't necessarily see the inside of his hand as they are face down.
Finally, I'm going to ask you about the conclusions that you made. You assumed that there was no way for the victim to have been surprised by the intruder, correct?
Yes. In Exhibit 1, you can see that he has a Ring doorbell on his front porch.
And isn't it true that you assumed that Mr. Brackman received alerts from this Ring app?
I would assume.
But you have no evidence of this, right?
No.
So you're assuming that Mr. Brackman received these alerts, correct?
Yes.
And finally, isn't it correct that you cannot know for certain whether the victim heard the back door open?
That can't be, we can't tell that necessarily.
And you claim that you would prefer having more physical evidence, correct?
Yes.
And all of this means that you did not have the evidence in order to recreate all segments of the event, correct?
No, we didn't have all the evidence, considering that the Ring doorbell couldn't be recreated.
Yes. And thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Wise, direct examination?
I believe so. Mr. Kuzak, you are recognized as an expert in this case, right? Kuzak? Xavier? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
You are an expert in this case, correct?
Yes, I am.
And we have already established your prior training, I believe. And I will ask one more time on question 9, if you could. In this case, what did your thorough investigation actually reveal?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
In this case, what did your thorough investigation reveal?
It revealed that the murderer approached the front door and tried to get in. When the murderer couldn't get in, they went to the back side gate and came in through the back door.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Any recross examination?
No. Oh,
No recross necessary, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
No recross necessary, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Cusack, you can step down. Would the prosecution please call their next witness?
I'd like to call Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
All right, Detective Markowitz, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Herrera.
Please state your first and last name for the record.
Jordan Markowitz
And who do you work for?
for the Denver Police Department.
What is your job?
I'm a detective
And how long have you been a police officer?
for 13 years,
And how long have you been a detective?
7 out of those.
Have you had any specialized training?
Yeah, I graduated from the police academy. I have several certificate programs for detective.
How many cases have you investigated as a homicide detective?
Oh, hundreds of cases.
Have you had any training with cell phone technology?
Definitely extensive training. I'm an expert.
What kind of cell phone technology training?
I have a cell phone technology and forensic recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
And what did that course entail?
It was a 3-day training course that taught us how to use specific softwares to interpret cell phone data and records, specifically how to use the software called Celebrite.
What is that system?
That's a system that allows us to download information from cell towers.
What else did the course teach?
How to acquire and interpret cellular records.
How many times have you analyzed this data as a detective?
I've downloaded the contents of like hundreds of phones, and I've obtained and interpreted data from cell towers in over 50 cases.
Your Honor, we would like to have Detective Markowitz entered as an expert in detective work and cell phone analysis.
Any objection, voir dire?
Your Honor, no voir dire is necessary, but there is cross-examination prepared for this witness.
I just asked you if you had any objection or voir dire for this witness.
No objection, Your Honor, but there is cross-examination prepared.
The witness is qualified by education, training, and experience to opine as an expert. You'll be allowed to do so.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Markowitz, when were you assigned to this case?
March 6, 2020.
And what happened?
Well, a passerby reported seeing somebody passed out on the porch of 444 South Flower Street.
Then what happened?
Paramedics initially responded to the call, but they called for officers up on the scene after they found victim Bragman dead inside the front door of his house.
What did you observe when you arrived?
Well, the front door was open. The victim was face down on the floor in a pool of blood, and a large knife was visible on the floor just past the victim.
Okay, and what was the cause of death?
It was very obvious that the victim had been stabbed with the knife.
Okay, Detective, I'd like to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 1, which I believe has already been entered. What is it?
It shows a photo that shows the victim's body is viewed from the porch.
And do you believe that this photo is an accurate depiction of the scene?
Yes, it definitely is.
Okay, Detective, I'd like to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 2. What is it?
It's a photo that shows the victim's body is viewed from inside the house.
And is this photo an accurate depiction of the scene?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Also, I would just like a question real quick. Has Exhibit 3 been entered?
I don't show that it has.
Sorry, what'd you say?
No.
Okay. Sorry, one second. Okay. Detective, I'd like to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 3. One second. What is it?
Here should be a close-up photo of the victim's back and the stab wound, clearly visible in the picture.
Your
Okay.
Honor, may I ask that Exhibit 3 is screen shared so it may be presented if the witness is authenticating it?
Ms. Herrera?
Oh, yeah, sure. I was just planning to do that when I was going to enter it. Sorry, 1 second. Can you guys see it?
Yes. Please continue.
Sorry. Okay. Detective, what is this photo?
It's a close-up photo of the stab wound of the victim and the victim's back.
And is this photo an accurate depiction of the scene?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
3 will be admitted.
Okay. Okay. Detective, was there a video surveillance camera at the house?
Yes, there was. The Ring doorbell. There was one in the backyard as well.
So Detective, can you walk us through what you observed that morning?
Yeah, so first I showed up and I walked around the residence and I observed that Ring camera in the front. I wanted the rear gate and the rear door. The side gate, the house was unlatched, the back door was wide open. Right into the back door, I noticed that the house was in a big disarray. Looked like there'd been a struggle. Noticed a partially open kitchen drawer that had several knives and a knife block on the counter with one large empty slot.
Okay. 1 second. Okay. Detective, I'd like to show you has been marked as Exhibit 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share these. Detective, what is Exhibit 7?
It's a photo of the knife drawer, the knife block on the counter with a large empty slot. Should be on the next one.
And do you feel like this is inaccurate?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit 8.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
This is a photograph of the knife block as I found it on the scene at the time.
And is this an accurate depiction of the scene?
Yes, it is.
And finally, I'd like to show you what has been marked as Exhibit 9. What is it?
It's a photograph of the broken plate we observed.
Okay. And do you feel this is an accurate depiction of the scene?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, we would like to put these into evidence.
7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Any objection to 7, 8, or 9?
No objections, Your Honor.
7, 8, and 9 will be admitted.
Okay. Detective Markowitz, what did the kitchen and dining area look like?
So one of the chairs was knocked over. There was a broken plate on the floor, several drops of blood on the floor, and splatters on the wall as well.
Did you look throughout the house?
Yes, I did.
And did you find anything?
Well, it was very surprising that I found that nothing valuable had seemed to be stolen, like computers, TVs, anything with value was still untouched and still in the house.
Based on your observations, what did the crime scene show occurred?
Well, that the victim had caught someone breaking into their house. It likely confronted the intruder with a large knife, and during the struggle, the intruder took the knife and stabbed victim Beckman.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Response, Mr. Ryan?
Well, these are just his observations. We're not claiming this as the truth. This is what he's just observed.
Response, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, the witness has not testified to enough foundation as to give to its observation that the victim was stabbed in the back. Now, if opposing counsel would like to lay more foundation.
On that ground, I'm going to overrule it, but he's trying to give an opinion about his analysis of the crime scene, which is beyond the expertise for which he was qualified. So, Ms. Herrera, you're going to need to ask him some more questions about what he saw and what he did that allowed him to draw that conclusion. Objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'd like to just to carry on.
Okay.
Could I have 1 second really fast to plug in my charger? It'll only be 1 second.
Sure.
Your Honor, should I stop time for this?
No.
Ready to go.
I have no further questions, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Detective Markowitz. I'm going to start by asking you some questions about your investigation. Now, isn't it true that Mr. Brackman was a criminal defense attorney?
Yeah, that's true.
And isn't it true that this crime could have been committed by a disgruntled ex-client?
If you say so.
Now, you went to the mock trial team first for leads, correct?
That's correct.
But it was highly unlikely that mock trial had anything to do with his death, correct?
Is that so? Why would we rule that out?
Now, I'm going to ask you some questions about the way in which you gathered your evidence. Now, you spoke to Ms. Cifuentes, correct?
That's correct.
And you received text messages from Ms. Cifuentes that were between Ms. Cifuentes and Ms. Becker, correct?
Yes, screenshots.
Right, so these texts were just screenshots, correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Cifuentes sent you these screenshots because she forgot her phone at your meeting, isn't that right?
That's correct.
And then Ms. Cifuentes sent you the screenshots the next day, correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Cifuentes was supposed to send you these screenshots ASAP, isn't that right?
I guess so.
And in a murder trial, as soon as possible was the next day, isn't that right?
That's right.
And in a murder trial, you found it sufficient enough just to see screenshots of these texts, isn't that right?
Yes. That's more than sufficient enough.
And you never saw the authentic messages on the phone, correct?
I haven't seen the authentic messages, no.
Now let's talk about the cell detail records you collected. Now you collected call detail records from Ms. Becker, correct?
Correct.
And you saw that Ms. Becker received many short calls as a number you later identified as Ms. Taylor Perkins, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that these calls were a very short duration?
That's correct.
So it's likely that because these calls were of such short duration, they were never answered. Isn't that right?
Could be.
And Ms. Becker received many texts from Ms. Perkins that were also never answered. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And now it's to your understanding that Ms. Becker claims to have lost her phone the day prior, correct?
Correct.
Now let's talk about the cell tower diagrams you collected. Now you collected the cell tower diagrams from Ms. Becker, correct?
Correct.
Now, isn't it true that it's likely Ms. Becker's phone didn't connect to the nearest tower instead of a farther away tower? Yes?
Are you answering for me, or do you need me to answer it? You just said yes. It could be.
Now, this would be because the near cell tower was unavailable, so Ms. Becker's phone would connect to a farther cell tower that was available, correct?
So what should happen now?
And isn't it true that it's likely Ms. Becker's phone connected to a farther cell tower instead of the nearest, correct?
Correct.
Now, let's talk about the cell tower diagrams you didn't collect. Now, Ms. Perkins was the one calling and texting Ms. Becker, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't collect Ms. Perkins's cell tower diagrams, did you?
No need. Every Becker is a murderer in this case.
And now you didn't collect cell tower records for anyone else, anyone with a possible relationship to Mr. Brackman. Isn't that right?
No, I think our methods are very strong and we are very, very efficient, and we know for sure that we got the right one.
Now let's take a look at your methods. Would you please direct your attention to Exhibit 16?
Please.
And now would you please now, excuse me. Now, is this the diagram you created in this case?
That's correct.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of this diagram?
That's correct.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, authentication and identification, the witness has identified Exhibit 16 as the cell tower diagram he created. Your Honor, permission to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Is there any objection, Ms. Herrera?
No, Your Honor.
16 will be admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Detective Markowitz, would you please direct your attention to the upper left quadrant? And now would you direct your attention to the marked location of Rollins' house?
Yeah.
And now you created this document, correct?
That's correct.
And you marked this location, correct?
Pretty sure I did then, yeah.
Now, this marked location is Blair Rollins' house. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And Blair Rollins' house is of the same distance to Mr. Brackman's house as Miss Becker's house is to Mr. Brackman's house. Isn't that right?
Doesn't appear to me. Looks a little bit closer, maybe even.
Right. But you didn't collect the cell tower records for Blair Rollins, did you?
No need. We got the right one.
And now you, excuse me. And now you only collected these cell tower records for a very limited period of time. Isn't that right?
That's correct, to find out that we got the right one.
Now, according to your methods, using these diagrams, you are sure you can pinpoint Miss Becker's location near Mr. Brackman's house. Yes?
Asked and answered.
Ruled.
I'll restate the question. Now, Detective Markowitz, using this diagram, you are sure you can pinpoint if Miss Becker's location according to your methods, correct?
That's correct.
Now, likewise, if you had collected Blair Rollins' cell tower records, you could also pinpoint Blair Rollins' location near Mr. Brackman's house, correct?
I mean, if that's the case.
Now, in addition to this, if you had collected Miss Perkins' cell tower records, you could also pinpoint Miss Perkins' location near Mr. Brackman's house, according to your methods. Yes? But
correct.
you didn't, did you?
No need. We got the one. Avery Becker's a murderer.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Redirect examination, Ms. Herrera?
No need, Your Honor.
All right, the witnesses can step down. Any further witnesses on behalf of the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
All right, prosecution rests. Would the defense please call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Taylor Perkins to stand.
All right, and Taylor Perkins has already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Karras.
Good evening, Ms. Perkins. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good evening. My name is Taylor Perkins, and I'm a freshman at CU Boulder.
Ms. Perkins, why are you here today?
I'm here today because Avery didn't do this. She was with me the entire day.
Can you be more specific about the time that you were together?
Sure. We were together the morning, the afternoon, and into the evening of March 6th.
And what is the significance of this time period?
The significance of this time period is that, to my understanding, this is when Coach Brackman unfortunately died.
And now let's talk about mock trial and your relationship with Miss Becker. Why did you join mock trial?
Well, I mostly joined mock trial because, well, Avery did it, and Avery's my best friend, so I wanted to spend more time with her.
And did you enjoy mock trial?
Oh, I did. Yeah, it was super fun, and I thought I was pretty good at it.
Was Miss Becker good at it?
Avery was amazing. I mean, frankly, it was just inspiring watching her.
Now, let's talk about some of the relationships in mock trial. What was your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
Coach Brackman and I had a typical student-teacher relationship. I mean, the only time we talked was really during practice.
And from your observations in these practices together, what was the relationship like between Mr. Brackman and Miss Becker?
Coach Backman and Avery had an interesting relationship, I would say. They both really cared about mock trial, just in different ways.
And how do you know this?
Well, I was Coach's student, so from that experience, I know that he really liked organization and structure, and he didn't like it when students went off their script.
And did Miss Becker stay on script?
Avery was a natural when it came to mock trial, so she didn't need one.
Now, let's talk about some conflicts that happened in mock trial. What happened when Miss Becker went off script?
Well, this one time, Avery came in and she went off script, and while Coach Bachman, he actually demoted her down to the B team.
Objection, speculation.
Your response?
Your Honor, this witness was actually there and she has a present sense impression of what happened at this time.
Well, she didn't testify to that. She'll also sustain the objection.
How do you know that Miss Becker went off script?
I was there at the practice she went off script.
And what happened after that?
After she went off script, like I said, she was demoted down to the B team.
And what did you decide to do after Miss Becker was demoted to the B team?
Well, after she was demoted to the B team and was eventually kicked off, I decided to leave the team.
Why did you make that decision?
I knew that Avery was definitely A team material, and if I was off of the team, Coach Bachman would move her back up to the A team, so the team would have a better chance of making it to state.
Now, you mentioned that Miss Becker was kicked off of the team. What happened after this?
After Avery was kicked off of the team, she tried to apologize to Coach Bachman for what she did, but he stuck with his decision.
And what happened after Miss Becker apologized?
Avery and I talked to Avery about different ways that she could possibly get back on the team, so she tried to talk to Coach Bachman.
And what happened next?
Coach Bachman didn't want to talk to her, so I discussed with her different ways. We decided actually that she should try to reach out to other team members to see if they had any ideas.
And what was the result of this?
Well, no one did have any ideas, so, nothing changed.
Now, I'd like to move on to the night of March 5th. What did you do that evening?
That evening, Avery and I headed to the Fry Shack after we hung out at my house a little bit.
And what happened while you're at the Fry Shack?
While we were at the Fry Shack, some members from the mock trial team showed up.
And what happened once they arrived?
Well, Avery, she actually went up to go to the bathroom and she left her phone on the table.
Then what happened?
Avery came back from the bathroom and we decided to go to the mall because there were some pretty awesome sales going on that day.
Now, let's move on to the day of March 6th. What happened that morning?
That morning, I texted Avery to see if she was going to pick me up for school, but she never answered.
Then what happened?
Well, she actually did come pick me up, and, I talked to her about why she didn't answer me, and we realized that her phone was actually missing.
What did you decide to do after that?
Well, we decided to go look for her phone.
And where did you go first?
Well, the first place we went is to the mall because we had to retrace our steps.
And what did you do at the mall?
Well, we went to every single store we went to the night before, which was a lot because there were some awesome sales, like I said, and, we pretty much burned through the whole day there.
And what did you do after spending the day at the mall?
Well, like I said, we burned through a lot of time there, so we eventually got hungry. And I also remembered that Avery had left her phone on the table the night before, so we decided to head to the Fry Shack.
Then what happened?
While we were there, some mock trial students showed up, which, I thought was pretty weird.
And what happened after they arrived?
Well, after they arrived, I learned that Coach Bachman didn't show up, which was actually why they left.
And what made it so that Mr. Brackman did not show up?
Well, to my understanding, that's actually the time that he had died.
And once you found out that Mr. Brackman had died, what happened?
Well, Avery's lawyers, they called me about being a witness. And, I was shocked.
Why were you shocked?
Well, because Avery she shouldn't even need lawyers. She didn't do this. She was with me the entire day.
And how can you be so sure of this?
Like I said, we were together the entire day. We went to the mall and the Fry Shack. nowhere even near Coach Brockman's house.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination, Ms. Herrera?
Okay. Taylor, sorry. Taylor, you're one of Avery's best friends, correct?
Yes, I am.
Would you say you and she are basically inseparable?
Well, I would say we definitely spent a lot of time together.
So, yes.
Well, not necessarily inseparable. I mean, we lived in different houses, but we were together a lot.
Okay. You guys would you say that you guys would go everywhere together and do everything?
Well, not necessarily, but like I said, we spent a lot of time together.
Now, in your affidavit, you stated that Avery put little effort into mock trial, correct?
Well, I know she put in at least a little. I mean, she was super good and a natural, so she didn't need to put in as much as the rest of us.
So your answer is yes, like overall.
Yes.
Brockman was always getting on Avery for being lazy, right?
Well, to my understanding, yeah. I mean, you know, it didn't really seem like he liked her all that much.
According to you, Avery really never came prepared or showed up a little later to practice almost every day, correct?
Well, that's pretty much true, but like I said, she was a natural, so she didn't need as much work as the rest of us.
And would you say this made Mr. Brockman angry?
Well, I can't really testify to what Mr. Brockman felt, but from my perspective, he did seem angry.
Did Brockman and Avery have an intense feud between them?
Objection, Your Honor. The question calls for speculation.
I'm just asking for observations.
I'm sorry?
I'm just asking for observations.
Well, you asked her for the conclusion, so ask her about her observations, and then if she has a basis, she can state her conclusion. But right now, I have to sustain the objection. But you can ask her some more questions.
Okay. Avery played pranks on your coach, right?
Only pranks that wouldn't harm anyone.
According to you, Avery could be rash and had a bit of an inflated ego.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper impeachment.
Overruled. So please restate the question, Ms. Herrera.
Okay. Would you say that Avery could be a little insensitive at times?
Well, I mean, isn't everyone?
A month before the final tournament, Avery came to practice the most unprepared she had ever been. Correct?
From my perspective, yes.
And from your observations, this infuriated Mr. Brockman, and this resulted in Avery being kicked off the team.
From my observations, yes.
And Avery retaliated this and vandalized Mr. Brockman's car, correct?
Well, I wouldn't really say that she retaliated from that specific incident, but she did end up writing on Coach's car and what she thought was, you know, dry erase marker at the time.
But this happened to be black permanent marker on a white Porsche, correct?
It was found out later that it was permanent marker, but I mean, she really didn't mean to write in permanent marker.
And Brockman had threw him permanently off the team, correct?
After this incident, Brockman did kick Avery off of the team, yes.
And would you say that Avery reached out to everyone and tried to ask Mr. Brockman to have her back on the team?
I would say that Avery tried to reach out to almost everyone in the team. I can't testify to who specifically, but yeah.
But this was including Alex Fuentes, correct?
Well, I thought that it might have been Alex, but like I said, I can't testify to who she actually reached out to.
Okay. You and Avery saw Alex at the Fry Shack the day before at evening of the murder, before the murder, correct?
That is true, yes.
Everyone, including Alex, was sympathetic towards Avery, right?
I mean, Alex seemed a tiny bit insincere, like she mostly always does, but yeah.
It is your testimony that you and Avery did not go to school the next day, right?
This is true. We decided to go look for her phone instead.
That was the day of the murder, correct?
Yes.
It is your statement that you guys ditched the whole day, correct?
Yes, we ditched the whole school day.
Isn't it true that Avery had not answered any of your text messages that morning?
Yes, because, she lost her phone.
So despite being able to find her phone using the iCloud website, you chose to drive around looking for it, correct?
I mean, I tried to call her phone, and also we didn't really remember until later we could use, the Find My iPhone, because I had an Android. So, I totally forgot about it.
And isn't it correct that you quote, you would never in a million years think that Blair Rollins might have been involved in this murder?
Well, I mean, that was before. I mean, now, I'm thinking maybe he could have.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Examination, Ms. Karras?
No redirect necessary, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Would the defense please call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls its next witness to the stand, Professor Blake Van Owen.
All right.
And Your Honor, excuse me. Your Honor, Your Honor, before I proceed, may I ask for a brief time check?
Sure.
At this time, you have 18 minutes and 53 seconds.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Professor. Would you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
Good evening. My name is Professor Blake Van Owen.
And why are you here today?
I'm here today to show that the prosecution's case is faulty and unsound.
Now, let's talk about your qualifications. What is your current occupation?
As of now, I work as a professor of police practices and social justice at CU Denver, and I am a private investigator as well.
Now, what does being a private investigator entail?
There are two main parts that take up the job of private investigator. The first of those would be the analysis and evaluation of different cases, and the second would be the availment as an expert witness in district and state courts.
Now, do you specialize in any areas?
There are many areas with which I have special expertise, but those most pertinent to the case today would be crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
What is your experience in those fields?
Well, I've been working as a private investigator for the past 8 years, and I've consulted on over 100 cases.
And how are you compensated for your time?
Right now, I make an average rate for someone with my expertise and someone in another part of the country whose job process is similar to mine would receive a similar amount of compensation.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, testimony by experts, and Rule 703, basis of an expert's opinion, I'm tendering Professor Blake Van Owen as a qualified expert in the fields of crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Okay, the third one, general. The third area, general police.
Your Honor, the third area is general police investigation tactics.
Any objection of voir dire? Ms. Salih? Ms. Salih, do you have any objection, or do you want to conduct voir dire of this witness tendered as an expert?
Can you hear me?
I could hear you now.
Okay, no, Your Honor.
All right. Court will find that the witness is qualified by education, training, and experience to opine as an expert in the three areas for which he was offered. You may continue, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Professor Van Owen, what did you evaluate during your evaluation of today's case?
For today's case, I conducted an evaluation of the crime scene reconstruction by Kyle Cusack and the investigation and evidence of Detective Markowitz.
Now, what stuck out to you during your evaluation?
After looking at those things, there were three main factors that stuck out to me. The first of those would be the lack of evidentiary support for the stabbing method that was proclaimed by the prosecution.
What's the second?
The second of those two issues would be the uncertainty in location based on the call detail records from Ms. Becker's cell phone.
And finally, what's the third?
Finally, with reference to the case as a whole, this case is simply methodologically unsound.
Now, Professor Van Owen, let's start with the first issue you found, the uncertainty of the stabbing method. Now, what evidence did you review for this?
A part of my job is to review the crime scene itself as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. So I looked at the physical reconstruction of Kyle Kuzak, the Ring doorbell videos, and the autopsy report.
Now, let's start with the Ring doorbells videos. What did you see in those videos?
In those videos, you can see an intruder of smaller stature with reference to Mr. Brackman himself.
Now, what's the significance of this?
In my expert opinion, as someone that's reviewed hundreds of cases similar to this, in a stabbing case where someone is actually stabbed with a knife, it is most commonly for a smaller intruder to be above the seated, above Mr. Brackman, who was seated when he was stabbed.
Now, let's talk about the autopsy report. How did this play into this conclusion?
A couple of the details I noticed in the autopsy report were referencing the force of the knife, which was down and toward the aorta.
And is your conclusion different than the prosecution's?
The prosecution would like you to believe that the smaller intruder, as seen in the Ring doorbell videos, was somehow engaged in a struggle with Mr. Brackman while Mr. Brackman was holding a knife, managed to grapple the knife away from Mr. Brackman, and then proceed to reach all the way over a larger person and exact enough force to kill Mr. Brackman during the scene of a struggle.
Now, Professor, in your expert opinion, what is the most likely scenario of the stabbing method used?
In my expert opinion, the most likely scenario based on-scene evidence and the autopsy report is that the intruder snuck up on Mr. Brackman and while standing above him, stabbed the knife down and toward the aorta through the upper left scapula.
Now, let's move on to the second issue, the inaccuracy of the cell tower diagrams. Now, did you review the cell tower diagrams?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Karras, would you please screen share Exhibit 16? Thank you. Now, Professor, what did you notice during your review of this diagram?
The very first thing I noticed were the times, towers, and sectors with which Avery's cell phone connected to.
What did you notice about the sectors?
As you can see on that exhibit, there's this wide red area, which is said to be the sector with which Avery's cell phone connected. And the prosecution thinks that because the cell phone was somewhere within that area, it accurately places it.
Now, do these cell towers accurately place Ms. Becker's location?
Unfortunately, they do not. As an expert in cell tower analysis, I can tell you that those red areas cover an area of 38 square miles. So all we know from this information is that Ms. Becker's phone was somewhere within 38 square miles of Mr. Brackman's house.
Ms. Karras, would you please stop screen sharing? Thank you. Now, Professor, let's move on to the last issue, that the investigation was methodologically unsound. Now, what made it unsound?
There were a few factors that played into this. The primary factor would be the lack of evidence gathered by Detective Markowitz.
What evidence did Detective Markowitz fail to gather?
One piece of evidence that was failed to gather was information regarding Ring doorbell notifications.
And what would we have known from these Ring doorbell notifications?
Were Detective Markowitz, like he should have, to have gathered information through a production of records request from Ring itself, we would have understood whether or not Mr. Brackman was alerted to the intruder's presence in this case, helping paint a better picture of the actual crime.
And now, did Detective Markowitz fail to gather any other evidence?
While we're on the topic of cell phones, he also failed to gather information regarding call detail records for anyone other than Ms. Becker.
Now, what could these call detail records shown in the case? that they were collected?
We have heard from Ms. Perkins today that she and Ms. Becker were not present at or near Mr. Brackman's house during the crime, but rather searching for Ms. Becker's phone at the Fry Shack in the mall. And were records to have been gathered for perhaps the previous day, we might have learned that Ms. Becker's cell phone and Ms. Perkins connected to towers that cover the mall and the Fry Shack, which would have corroborated that story.
Now, did the prosecution look into any other suspects?
The prosecution noted the presence of a Blair Rollins, yet they did not investigate.
Who is Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins is the child of a Jonathan Rollins, a former client of Mr. Brackman's, who was sent to jail for a life sentence.
What is the significance of that?
The primary significance is that Blair Rollins is a clear suspect in this case that was not investigated from the get-go.
Now, Professor, do you have an expert opinion in this case?
Yes.
What is that expert opinion?
In my expert opinion, across the fields of crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics, this investigation was rushed. And when you are rushed, you simply miss things. Some things that they missed are police work 101. You identify a suspect, you investigate the suspect, and you check the evidence to make sure that that suspect is not pertinent to this case. Yet, the police did not do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination, Ms. Salih.
Mr. Van Owen, you're no longer an Aurora police officer, are you?
I last worked for the Aurora Police Department over 10 years ago.
You left that job after allegations that you were racist, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, more prejudicial than probative.
You want to respond, Ms. Salih?
Can you explain what that means for me, please?
She's saying that the value of the evidence, the probative value of the evidence, is substantially outweighed by the prejudicial effect that the incident you're asking about involved some sort of racist behavior.
That's why he left his job. So it's
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection.
the case ended up as a settlement between that victim, you, and the city, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
It's relevant because I'm laying a foundation.
Response, Your Honor.
No, Ms. Salih, you're laying a foundation for what?
For the rest of my questions.
No, the objection will be sustained.
Are you ready to continue, Mr. Van Owen?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you agree with, or that you disagree with many police policies, not just those regarding force?
At their core, the foundation of police and police work is simply something I don't agree with, considering many of their practices and ideologies.
Including you with police work and policemen, didn't it?
Would you mind repeating that? I didn't catch the first part.
The whole situation disillusioned you with the police work and policemen, didn't it?
It certainly did a little bit.
After leaving the force, you bounced around with different jobs like a security guard, school resource officer, and some private investigations, correct?
Yes, I landed on private investigator.
You never went to FBI training, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
Now, I may not have done actual FBI training, but I do have a master's degree in criminal justice from Ashford University.
You never went to crime scene investigation school either, did you?
Part of my daily job over these past 8+ years has been crime scene reconstruction and the analysis of said reconstruction, so I consider that experience to be formal training.
Can I ask you to respond with a yes or no, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You never trained with AT&T, Apple, or T-Mobile on cell tower programs, have you?
Not explicitly, no.
In fact, all of your so-called experience comes from your belief experience as a school resource officer, PI, and your schooling at Ashford University's online program, correct?
The bulk of my experience comes from my work as a private investigator in over 100 cases.
And now, Mr. Brockman, or I'm sorry, isn't it true that a good investigator takes their time and goes through the evidence very thoroughly?
Most certainly.
And that's because to find the truth, one must be thorough and exact, correct?
That is the truth.
Anything less than being thorough and detailed would be unworthy of consideration, correct?
Especially in this case, a murder investigation, one needs to be extremely thorough if they are to impanel the jury against the defendant.
Juries need to have the most thorough and exact evidence to make their decisions, correct? Like you just said.
In order to reach and surpass the burden of proof, they do need that evidence, yes.
Now, you are being paid by the defense, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true you always testify for the defense?
While in past cases I would happily testify on behalf of a prosecution were they to hire me.
Okay. You like to think of yourself as a check on the power of police, don't you?
I would prefer to think of myself as somebody that shares their expertise and searches for justice rather than easy conclusions.
According to you, you make a decent living trying to show that the police have dropped the ball, correct?
I got into private investigation to supplement my income as a teacher and to make sure I could live healthily.
When investigating this case, you only looked at the police reports, didn't you?
I looked at the crime scene reconstruction of Kyle Kuzak, on-scene evidence, the physical information prepared by Detective Markowitz, and I gathered some extra evidence with reference to Blair Rowlands.
All right. You never went to the crime scene once, did you?
Unfortunately, as a civilian investigator, I don't have physical access to a crime scene.
And you never went to the cell tower locations personally, did you?
Luckily for us, with the advent of modern technology, we don't need to go to the cell tower locations to gather accurate information.
So you never went to the cell towers?
No.
In fact, you never recreated this scenario by putting a phone in the location indicated by the police to test your theory, did you?
That is seemingly not necessary in this case, considering the way cell phone technology works.
So you never went to the cell tower locations personally, did you?
That is
Objection,
simply
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled.
That is simply unnecessary in order to form an opinion, considering cell towers gather
Basically,
information.
you are being paid.
Objection, Your Honor. Would you please instruct opposing counsel to let me finish answering the question?
Overruled.
Okay. So basically, you're being paid by the defense to simply look at reports, not really investigate, correct?
While I did look at records, I also conducted a partial investigation.
So basically, you're being paid by the defense to simply look at reports and not really investigate, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled. He didn't answer it.
What I am being paid for in today's case is to analyze and evaluate the validity of the prosecution's investigation, as well as conduct a partial investigation into the matter to formulate my own conclusions.
In fact, because you didn't personally investigate this case and because you were not thorough, you violated your own ethics.
I investigated this case with reference to a potential suspect, Blair Rowlands, using standard investigative procedures, and I exhausted all online methods of investigation. Thus, I did, in fact, adhere to my own principles.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Redirect examination, Ms. Mastrangelo.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Now, Professor Van Owen, is it your job to conduct a full investigation as a private investigator?
In some cases, I'm hired to do so. In this case, considering I was hired after the defendant was charged, my job was thus to evaluate the conclusions and the evidence gathered by the prosecution, not actually conduct a full investigation myself.
And Professor Van Owen, what evidence did you look at in this case?
I looked at evidence, all exhibits from 1 to 22, and I looked through the
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, Professor Van Owen, during your evaluation, did you look into everything you could?
Any piece of evidence or any piece of information presented by the prosecution, prepared by,
Oh, pleading, my bad.
Overruled.
Professor Van Owen, would you continue?
yes, any piece of evidence or information that was gathered or prepared by Detective Markowitz, I looked over. I looked over the crime scene photos, the crime scene reconstruction conducted by Kyle Kuzak, and any information with any sort of relevance to this case.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Ms. Salim.
No, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would the would the defense please call their next witness?
Your Honor, before the defense calls their third and final witness, I'd like to request a brief time check.
Go ahead.
You have 9 minutes and 8 seconds left.
Thank you. Permission to proceed, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Ms. Becker. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good evening. My name is Avery Becker.
Ms. Becker, why are you here today?
I shouldn't be here at all. They're accusing me of things that I would never do. And the thought of the things they're accusing me of makes me sick to my stomach.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about your high school experience. What high school did you attend?
I went to Colorado High School. We called it CHS.
Did you participate in any extracurricular activities there?
I was in mock trial for 4 years and I loved it.
Why did you decide to do mock trial?
Well, it sounded fun. You know, I kind of just heard about it and then I started doing it and I just realized that I was pretty good at it and I just wanted to do it in high school.
And who was your mock trial coach?
Coach Brackman.
Would you mind explaining to the jury a little bit about what your relationship with Mr. Brackman looked like?
I knew Coach Brackman for 4 years and I looked up to him for a really long time. You know, of course you do, because when you know someone for that long, it's hard not to. We did start to argue in my senior year, though.
Okay. Now let's move on and talk about the events that took place after your final regional competition in mock trial. What happened in the practice after your final regional competition?
I had just won an award for Best at Regionals. I was really excited. And I did hope that Coach Brackman would also be really excited because I thought it was good for the team. But we ended up having an argument over work ethic, which happened quite a bit.
Then how did this argument make you feel?
I felt kind of powerless. It's hard to argue with your coach, you know, and I was pretty frustrated.
Then afterwards, what happened?
I just felt like I had to get some air. I just had to get out of that situation, you know, and so I walked out of the room and I still had a marker in my hand from standing at the board.
What did you do outside?
Well, I was just walking in the parking lot and I made the biggest mistake of my life. And I wrote on Coach Brackman's car.
Did you know that the marker was permanent?
I had no idea the marker was permanent. And even if it hadn't, that doesn't at all excuse what I did. But I thought it would just wipe right off.
What happened after the incident?
Well, Coach Brackman, he came out of the classroom to talk to me and he saw what I had done to his car and I already felt horrible and he was furious because it was a nice car and he kicked me off the team.
Did you do anything to try and make amends with Mr. Brackman?
I did everything I thought I could. I texted Coach Brackman. I offered to pay for the damages I had done to his car by getting a summer job. I even went to his workplace at the law firm he worked at to see if I could just talk to him in person, but I could never reach him. And then he was just gone.
Were you ever able to make amends with Mr. Brackman?
No, like I said, I wasn't able to talk to him, and then all of a sudden he was just gone.
Okay, thank you. And let's move on and talk about the events that took place on March 5th. What did you do after school that day?
My best friend Taylor and I, we went to the Fry Shack to just blow off some steam after school.
Did you recognize anyone else there that you knew?
I recognized a lot of people. The Fry Shack is a pretty popular place for a lot of the kids in Montreal, and I definitely saw Alex Fuentes there.
How long did you and Miss Perkins stay at the Fry Shack?
We really didn't stay for very long. After we saw Alex, I set down my phone. We went to I went to the bathroom, sorry, and then Taylor and I went to the mall.
Did you bring your phone with you into the bathroom?
I never bring my phone with me into the bathroom. I think that's kind of gross.
And how long did you and Miss Perkins stay at the mall that day?
We stayed for a while. Taylor really likes to shop, and so do I, and there were some good sales, so we just walked around. We went to the food court, and then when we were tired, we both just went home.
Okay. Now let's move on to the events that took place on March 6th, the day after. What happened on the morning of March 6th?
Well, I woke up and I could not, for the life of me, find my phone anywhere, and I was freaking out because, phones are really expensive, and so I went to Taylor's house to see if she'd help me look for it.
Did she?
Yeah, Taylor's always been such a great friend, and she offered to skip school with me to look for my phone.
How long did you and Miss Perkins go that day to look?
Well, we looked all day. I mean, I was frantically trying to look for my phone because I love my phone and I couldn't afford to get a new one, and so we looked from morning when I went to her house until late in the day, evening, when we were just too tired to keep looking.
Were you ever able to find your missing phone?
No, and this is so unlike me. As many times as I've ever misplaced my phone, I've never lost it like this. And Taylor even tried calling it, and it just went straight to voicemail as if it'd been stolen or just died. I have no idea.
Okay. Now let's move on to your relationship with other students. Now, you mentioned Alex Fuentes earlier. Would you mind describing your relationship with her?
Well, Alex and I have never really been very close. We were never enemies or anything. It's just that I always kind of got the feeling that she didn't like me, and I kind of suspected it was something to do with mock trial.
Did you talk to Mr. Fuentes very often?
No, in fact, I can't remember the last time I talked to Alex outside of mock trial.
Now, Mr. Fuentes claims to have received text messages from you. Did you text Mr. Fuentes?
No, I can't remember the last time I've ever texted Alex.
Now, did you notice anyone that Mr. Fuentes hung out with?
Well, this is just based on what I've seen because I didn't spend a lot of time with Alex, but what I did see, she spent quite a bit of time with Blair Rollins.
Do you know who Blair Rollins is?
I think that everyone at CHS does. Blair was pretty well known at school just because Blair's dad went to prison for life and Coach Brackman was his attorney.
Do you know where Blair Rollins is now?
Oh, I don't think that anyone does. Blair left town right after graduation.
Okay. Now, Ms. Becker, I have one final question for you. Were you anywhere near Mr. Brackman's house on March 6th?
No, and all I know is that my coach is gone and the person who did it is still out there and got the wrong person.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here today. I know it can't be easy for you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Right. Cross-examination, Mr. Weiser.
Yes, Your Honor. Avery, you won the Best Attorney Award in the regional championships, isn't this correct?
I did. I was pretty good at playing an attorney in mock trial.
And according to your affidavit, you felt like Brackman never gave you
Objection,
any credit
Your
for
Honor.
what you did.
Improper impeachment.
Rule.
Now, according to your affidavit, you feel like Brackman never gave you any credit for what you did, isn't this correct?
I was definitely frustrated because Brackman and I were pretty competitive and we argued over work ethic, and I did feel like sometimes he didn't appreciate the work that I put in.
You stated that you don't think Brackman was a good attorney, correct?
You know, I I've said a lot of things about Coach Brackman, and it was more of an expression of my frustration, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let me restate the question, as I didn't hear an actual answer to the question of, you said in your statement that Brackman was jealous of you, correct? Or sorry, you don't think that Brackman was a good attorney, correct?
You know, it was an expression. I was expressing how I felt in the moment. I sometimes felt like maybe he had a bit of an ego.
Brackman always criticized your work, didn't he?
You know, we definitely had a lot of differences of opinion about what constituted a good work ethic. So we did have arguments about that.
In fact, he called you lazy, didn't he?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
He did.
Overruled. The answer will stand.
He always interrupted you when you talked in class, didn't he?
I wouldn't say always. I mean, it has happened sometimes, yes.
Yet you showed him by winning the Best Attorney Award, didn't you?
Well, I was pretty excited about winning the Best Attorney Award because, you know, I was a senior, and I did think that he would at least be proud of me, yes.
And even then, Brackman just kept on picking on you afterward, didn't he?
Well, you know, like I said, I thought he would be proud of me, and instead we just ended up arguing some more over work ethic, which was really, really hard to go through.
And this just made you even angrier, didn't it?
I was definitely frustrated, yes. It was a really tough situation to be in.
In fact, you called him the worst coach in the state, didn't you?
I wish that I hadn't said that. Truly, if I had known that that would be one of the last things I ever said to Coach Brackman before he was gone, I wish we hadn't been arguing like that.
You told him the team would have lost regionals without you, didn't you?
Yeah, I definitely did feel like
What?
Your Honor, I objected to hearsay.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
I definitely did feel like I was a big part of the team's success, especially because I had just won a Best Attorney Award.
After this, you stormed out of practice, right?
Yes, I had to get some air after arguing with Coach Brackman.
And you took a permanent marker and wrote Worst Attorney Award on the hood of his white Porsche, didn't you?
I thought it was a dry erase marker. I thought it would wipe right off. I only found out after I had written on Coach Brackman's car that it was in fact permanent.
When he found out, Brackman said you would never be on the team again, correct?
He did kick me off the team, yes.
After this, your rage just got even more, didn't it?
I was very upset until I went home and I talked to my mom, yes, and she calmed me down like she always does.
Speaking of your mother, after this, you went home and lied to her, saying that Brackman kicked you off the team for no reason. Isn't this correct?
You know, I was just so horrified at what I had done. I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. I just needed my mom at the time, and then she calmed me down, and I just knew I had to face what I had done.
But you lied and did not mention anything about what you did to Brackman's Porsche, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled.
I wouldn't say I lied. I just couldn't face what I had done. I was so regretful of how everything had happened, and I just needed a moment to talk to my mom.
Did I hear the words, I wouldn't say I lied?
I wouldn't say I lied because I'm sorry. I just needed to talk to my mom first before I could face the horrible thing that I had done to Coach Brackman's car.
Do you have your affidavit in front of you?
I do, yes.
Can you go to line 105 for me? Sorry,
just a
line
moment.
103.
Line 103?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you read that for me?
I didn't tell her what I had done to his car.
Later, when you tried to apologize to Brackman, he wouldn't speak to you and wouldn't let you back on the team, correct?
I tried everything I could to make amends with Coach Brackman. I felt so terrible. I texted him. I even went to his work to see if he would talk to me, but I just couldn't get through to him.
And you weren't at school during the day of question?
I wasn't at school March 6th because I was looking with my best friend Taylor to find my phone.
Taylor and you are close friends, right?
She's my best friend, yes.
And you claim you were together the entire day in question and the day before?
We were. Yes, she helped me look for my phone all day. I was frantically looking for my phone.
And according to your affidavit, your phone is like your third kidney. Isn't that correct? You never go anywhere without it. That was compound.
Well,
Can you restate that? So your phone is like your third kidney, isn't that right?
That is not in my statement, but I am with my phone quite a bit.
Are you aware that Detective Markowitz's cell data report put you right next to Brackman's house?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question you cut out?
Are you aware that Detective Markowitz's cell data report put you right next to Brackman's house?
I am aware that my phone connected to cell towers near Coach Brackman's house on March 6th, but as I didn't have my phone at that time, it could not have been me.
Thank you. No further questions at the moment.
Redirect examination. Ms. Tusick?
No redirect necessary, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Any further evidence on behalf of the defendant?
No further evidence, Your Honor. Though before the defense rests, I'd like to confirm that exhibits 1, 2, 4, 6, and 16 were entered into evidence.
And 3, 7, 8, and 9.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense rests.
We'll hear closing arguments. For the prosecution, Ms. Salih?
Can I reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal?
Sure.
All right. Rage, rivalry, revenge. Rage, rivalry, revenge. Rage, rivalry, revenge led to second-degree burglary and a first-degree murder. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we talk about the case of a young man boiling with rage and arrogance. Avery Becker was a selfish, self-absorbed, and determined to get his way. Avery Becker had an irrational jealousy that led to the murder of his professor, Mackenzie Brackman. To better understand how this all led to burglary and murder, let me give you some background. Avery Becker competed on his high school mock trial team. By all accounts, Avery was a gifted and talented mock trial lawyer. However, his ego led him to believe that he was better than his real-life lawyer coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Avery believed that he didn't have to work hard at his craft and he didn't have to practice much or do his assignments. Avery's arrogance peaked when he won the Best Attorneys Award at regionals. He became even more complacent and wouldn't put in the practice that the other students were doing. When Coach Brackman confronted him and challenged him to work harder and be a better team member, he became angry and quit the team and left angrily. Even Avery will tell you that he was so angry at Mr. Brackman and she went and vandalized Mr. Brackman's white Porsche car, writing on it Worst Attorney Award with a black Sharpie. When Mr. Brackman refused to let her back on the team, Avery texted her friend, Avery Becker, that she was going to go to Brackman's house and vandalize it. If Brackman thinks he was upset about what happened to his car, wait until he sees what I do to his house. Those words clearly show his intent to commit burglary and his subsequent acts. My bad. I'm just gonna skip that word. Actions once in the house show his intent to commit first-degree murder. And ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what she did. On March 6, 2020, she broke into the house with a plan to vandalize it. Mr. Brackman was still at the house. When Brackman confronted her, a fight began. The evidence will show that the two of them struggled and that Avery stabbed him with a butcher knife. You have now heard testimony from several experts, and like in all cases, experts can differ on most anything. but we believe that what cannot be debated is the clear evidence. Avery had a motive and opportunity. And two is that Avery's cell phone data shows that Avery was in the area of Mr. Brackman's house at the time of the murder. Number three is that Avery fit the description of the attacker, as the defense will see on the security camera at the house. The defense tried to paint a picture that Avery's motive was weak compared to others. The key is that they didn't show that there was no motive. They were not able to dispute the cell tower data, and defense did not provide you with anything to back this theory up except for speculation. This case is straightforward. Rage, resentment, and revenge led to the murder of Mackenzie Brackman. Avery Becker must be held accountable. We ask that you return a verdict of guilty of burglary and murder.
Thank you, Ms. Sully. Can the timekeeper please tell her how much time she has left? It's 1 minute.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so Ms. Sully, you have 1 minute for your rebuttal close.
All right.
Closing argument on behalf of the defendant. Ms. Tusick?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court? Your Honor, members of the jury, the evidence and testimony you heard today proves that the prosecution's case is based on sloppy investigations, tunnel vision, and a desire for a convenient conclusion. In turn, that conclusion is erroneous and incorrect. And this is no simple case about a parking ticket. This is a murder trial, the result of which could lead to a young, innocent woman going to jail for a crime she did not commit. The prosecution made 2 charges against Avery Becker. Count 1, murder in the first degree, and count 2, second-degree burglary of a dwelling. The prosecution bears the burden of proof. They are obligated to prove every single element of the crime's charge beyond a reasonable doubt. This means that if you, the jury, have reasonable doubt regarding any of the elements, the prosecution has failed to meet their burden. Therefore, Avery Becker must be found not guilty. The prosecution called 3 witnesses to the stand in an attempt to prove all their claims. However, in the end, all they proved is how unreliable their case is. The prosecution called Jordan Markowitz, the homicide detective who failed to look into a disgruntled ex-client of Mr. Brackman's, as a viable suspect. Instead, Detective Markowitz followed the investigation where he wanted it to go, for the sake of convenience. In contrast, the defense called Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand. Professor Van Owen was able to rationally disprove Detective Markowitz's conclusions on multiple aspects of his investigation. These include things like the stabbing method and the fact that the cell tower analysis didn't pinpoint Ms. Becker's location on March 6th with absolute certainty. In fact, all the cell tower data showed was that Avery Becker was somewhere within 38 square miles of the crime scene. Professor Van Owen's job is to analyze investigations made by others. And in his expert opinion, Professor Van Owen was able to come to the conclusion that the foundation of the prosecution's case is methodologically unsound. The prosecution also called Kyle Kuzak, a crime scene reconstruction investigator. Mr. Kuzak noted several components to the case that could call for a different conclusion and chose not to follow any of them. Mr. Kuzak's so-called thorough investigation overlooked an alternative suspect. This thorough investigation glossed over vital observations, like a wedding ring on Mr. Brackman's hand. While it may be true, Mr. Kuzak thinks his investigation is thorough, what he thinks doesn't make something a fact. Here's what the facts actually show. 1, the facts show that Avery Becker couldn't have been anywhere near Mr. Brackman's house on March 6th, not only because she was with Taylor Perkins all day, but because she didn't even know where Mr. Brackman lived. 2, the facts show Blair Rollins as a reasonable and viable suspect in this case. Blair Rollins is the perfect example of the disgruntled ex-client Detective Markowitz had mentioned, yet failed to look into. The prosecution also called Alex Cifuentes, another member of mock trial. As passionate as Ms. Cifuentes was, she never received as many awards as Ms. Becker. This was the perfect nesting ground for jealousy, which, as we know, is a powerful and dangerous emotion. Ms. Fuentes can testify to how Avery Becker participated in mock trial, sure, but Taylor Perkins can testify to exactly where Avery Becker was on March 6th, as the two were together the whole day in search of a missing phone that was never found. The facts and evidence in today's case all go to prove that the prosecution tried and failed to justify the rushed and sloppy investigation. The facts and evidence in this case all go to prove that the prosecution favored convenience over justice. It has been shown time and time again throughout today's trial how the prosecution's carelessness led them to the convenient conclusion that put Ms. Becker on stand today. The prosecution tried to justify their investigation. However, it doesn't change the fact that they overlooked a prime suspect with clear motive. Following leads to identify other potential suspects is police work 101. What happens if you miss police work 101? You risk putting the wrong person, an innocent person, in jail, potentially for the rest of her life. The prosecution failed to meet their burden of proof, and because of this, the defense asks you to find Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Your rebuttal close, Ms. Sully. You have 1 minute.
All right. Avery had a clear motive, and that is that she was enraged and resented Mr. Brackman for demoting her and kicking her off the team. She was within the space limit of the cell phone towers, and she also stated in her statement today that she wouldn't call what she did lying. Rage, resentment, and revenge led to the murder of Mackenzie Brackman by Avery Becker.
Thank you. All right. I need to give the scoring judges a few minutes to compile their scores and then submit them to the tournament coordinator. That's probably take a minute or two. So in the meantime, you guys can all take a deep breath. That was a nice job. You were well prepared and well rehearsed and handled the technology quite well. When our scoring judges are done submitting their scores, why don't you let me know? And then I think they have a couple minutes of comments that they'd like to give you. I know it's late. They won't go for more than 2 or 3 minutes each, but I'm sure you probably want to hear what they have to say. Mr. Gardner-Wood, are your scores submitted?
They are, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you want to start? Give them
Sure.
a couple minutes of feedback.
Yeah, I definitely will. Nice job to both teams. I saw Team Fozzie on the opposite side in round one, so it was nice to see the team on the plaintiff side this time. And great job to Team Pepe. A couple comments. I thought both teams did a nice job with having a theme for their theory of either prosecution or defense. I will say when you're using that theme, it's great to have it and weave it throughout kind of your presentation and your argument. Be careful not to use it too much. It becomes a little too repetitive and maybe not quite as helpful, but good to have. As Judge Mulvihill said, I thought both teams did a nice job kind of understanding the case, being prepared for it. One thing I'll tell you is careful about notes. I think notes are okay to the extent that you're using them as an outline. Try not to use them just to read from. I think you all probably know the case better sometimes than you think you do, but you have the notes in front of you and it's easy there just to read it. So sometimes an outline format might be better because you're going to get more points. You're going to present better, not if you hit every single fact that you want to hit, but rather that presentation aspect. Because that's what we're looking for. Well, even though we're coming into this as lawyers, we're not looking for, the exact facts and the exact argument you're making, but rather how you present this. And what I love about mock trial and having been involved in it for a long time now, is the ability to kind of think on your feet. So the better you know the case, the better you can kind of roll with the punches. That's what we really look for. And that's going to be the difference between the various teams. The last thing I would say is objections are good. I love to see objections because, again, it goes back to that sort of thinking on your feet, listening, and being able to respond to it. Be careful with doing too many objections, particularly because you could get on a roll and you're getting some objections sustained, but then you start doing too many, and then you've kind of lost your point because now you're getting overruled, and then it maybe seems like you're not quite following with it. So I really like the idea of some good, well-timed, well-placed objections that can be argued, but really try and find those key objections that you're looking for that are going to make a point. And that's going to be less than a handful of objections. That's maybe that 3 to 5 range of objections where you can find the good ones. And then last thing I'll say is just, again, Judge is right. You all did a nice job with the technology. One of the things that's tough about this technology is you got to make sure you keep your voices up, make sure, there's obviously technological issues you can't deal with, but you have to recognize that we need to be able to hear you. So, really using your voice and making sure the microphone's picking you up, and then be careful about movement. Movement is really hard. I move a lot when I'm in trial. I like to move around, but it's very different if I'm looking at you moving in video than I am if I see you in person. So be very careful about the swaying and the moving around, because it becomes hard for an observer to watch that. But overall, I commend you. I congratulate you. I love high school mock trial. I did it. I've coached it. I've judged it for years, and it's a great activity. And I commend you all for doing it, and wish you great luck tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner-Wood. And just so you understand, folks, Mr. Gardner-Wood is one of the senior chief deputy district attorneys in the Boulder District Attorney's Office. Ms. Doyle, do you want to give them some feedback?
Sure. I would echo everything that Mr. Gardner has said. Excellent job, especially as the hour gets later and I'm sure the blood sugar drops slower. So well done, everyone. I would echo the idea that mock trial, what's really wonderful about it is that you get to be this presenter, this storyteller. And I think that's what some attorneys forget a lot of times, is that a lot of their job is to be a storyteller. And this is a great venue to learn and practice that skill. So when you're thinking about why do you have a theme, or why are you objecting, try to think of what story are you trying to convey to your audience who's coming into this, we all looked at the hearing packet, but you guys know this case so much better than we ever will. And so trying to lay that out for us is really helpful. So whenever you're doing objections, for example, not just objecting because you can, but objecting because you want to keep a bad fact out, or you want to keep or want to underline a particular point. So always highlighting for yourself why you're doing things, why you're making objections. Great job being professional and nice, not engaging too much, just getting just heated enough. Again, but be careful to walking over that line. It's really nice to see whenever a witness is being a little bit dodgy and the attorney is able to reel it back and just keep the witness to the questions, but not actually engage in any sort of emotional way. To see that professionalism is really rewarding. So in general, again, good job and good luck with the rest of the weekend.
Just so you know, Ms. Doyle is a former law clerk here, and she is now a hearing officer for the Colorado Department of Labor. So she actually presides over these type of proceedings on a regular basis. Ms. Camilio, do you want to give us some feedback?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I was really impressed by both teams. Clearly, the fact pattern hit close to home. I thought that was really funny, and it was just great to see every single participant step up into their respective roles. And just in general, Zoom court is hard. I've had to appear for hearings through Zoom, and technology always, something always comes up. And I was really impressed by everyone, staying, keeping their cool and taking a measured approach to asking questions and giving testimony. Especially the giving testimony part, since the jury is looking to you for the facts and what you're saying, and so it's good not to rush through your important points. And going back to what Starla said with telling a story, I thought everyone did great. And I did mock trial in law school, and I know how much hard work goes into these competitions. And I really thought everyone was able to convey their dedication to their roles, to their characters, and to their teams. So I would also echo what my other scoring judges have said in terms of feedback, and I wish everyone the best of luck moving forward.
And just so you know, Ms. Cornelio is a former law clerk with the 20th Judicial District. She's now a litigator with a very prominent law firm here in Boulder. So we're going to let you go so you can get some rest. Good luck to all of you tomorrow. Nice job. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor. Your Honor, I just wanted to confirm that Team Fozzie Bear only had participating team members in the room with them, that no coaches or other people were present in that room.
You can take that up pursuant to the rules.
Yes, Your Honor, as pursuant to Rule 2.5, that would be against the mock trial rules of competition. So if Fozzie Bear could confirm that no one else except the participating team members were in the room, that would be great.
You can talk to coach, you can file a complaint.